Buenas tardes, damas y caballeros. Es tiempo para empezar. I'm looking to my B2B crew. Where's my B2B crew from lunch? Oh, there's a bunch of them here. I've heard it's a little echoey, so we're going to try. You're going to keep pulling on ears as we keep going. Pat is not the first person to give me an honorary doctorate, though. About 15 years ago, I was giving a presentation at the Policía Nacional de Colombia down in Bogota to a couple hundred human resources leaders for the National Police in Colombia. And at that time, I would have been maybe 26 or so, and I saw on the agenda that they'd put Dr. Josh Berry, and I went to correct them. I'm like, no soy doctor. And they're like, no, you have to be a doctor if you're going to be presenting to these people. And so even at the end of it, I have this honorary plaque from the National Police of Colombia. It is about this large, and it says, to Dr. Joshua Berry. So thank you, Pat. I'm just going to keep amassing these wonderful honorary doctorates. All right, let's get on with the show. If you do not have a piece of paper and pencil, I encourage you to have something to write with, because this is going to be one of those interactive sessions. I will even permit, if you want to use your phone and a notes app or something, because I trust each and every one of you that you're not going to be on Slack or Teams or using Tim's AI that he was just telling you about, okay? But I do want to encourage your participation today. As PVG mentioned, my name is Joshua Berry. We work with a lot of companies, helping them with culture, leadership, and innovation initiatives. Most of this talk, though, is not going to be about that. This talk is actually going to be about that feeling you get when you really want to do something and you just don't get around to it. Right? Anybody have that? Things you would love to do in life, but something holds you back. Several years ago, I put writing a book on my bucket list, something that I really, really wanted to do. But I kept giving myself excuses, saying, the world already has too many books, and I'm a better curator than I am a creator. And when I was really honest with myself, I discovered I had this fear of rejection, of putting my own thoughts down in writing. And as long as I didn't write that book, I would be safe. Fast forward a little bit. In 2019, my friend Diana and I started doing some projects together on the side of Econic. And Diana and I were talking about co-authoring a book. She was already a New York Times bestseller. She'd already written another book besides that. And I was excited that she was going to be the front person and validate what we were doing. We were doing a bunch of great work up until this conference. It was the 2019 Lean Startup Conference in San Francisco, which coincidentally is where I met Patrick Patterson. He came up after our keynote. So because of this, I am here today. After Diana and I got off stage, she sat me down. And Diana said, "You know how you want to write a book with me? That's how I feel about writing a book with Brené Brown." Ouch. If you've ever, had yourself like completely deflated, that's exactly what it felt like in that moment. And the coup d'etat of all of that was some amazing conference photographer captured that moment into perpetuity for me. This is not a staged photo. Afterwards, they were so excited. They're like, "Look at this great photo we have of you two. This is excellent." Needless to say, it just further reinforced this story that I wasn't meant to write a book. In 2021, same friend, Diana, sent me a message around Christmas time and said, "My husband and I are putting together a charity auction, and we're helping somebody become an author. There's no one else I'd rather do this with than you." So our company bid on it, we won that, and I started writing a book. Throughout that entire journey, though, I kept having to push through that imposter syndrome, right? That fear of rejection. In fact, sending out early versions of the chapters was really hard. But you know what? I sent it out, and sometimes it wasn't as scary as I actually dreamed it was going to be. And other times I sent it out, and I got scathing criticism for what I sent. And I was still okay. And so through testing and learning, I was able to grow. Today, I'm extremely excited to say that Dare to Be Naive will be published in October. And this audience is the first group to get an advanced reader copy of that book. So, thank you to Patrick for the invitation to be here and marking this momentous occasion. You all will have a cool little tote bag, I'm told later, and your copy of the book will be in there. I was telling Laura right before this, I actually haven't even held it yet. So this is super brand new, and I'm excited to share that with you. Now, let's turn the tables on you. What is stopping you from doing your best work, from living your best life? Who, me? What? Yeah, I'm talking about you, yeah, and you, right? And you. I'm not going to call on people. Just make an eye contact. Don't worry. But I'm serious. You just learned a lot of cool stuff this morning about empathy, about stepping into some amazing things that Dana shared, about learning from Dr. John. Dr. John, ooh, is that a chain over here too? Back home in Nebraska, Dr. John's is like a lingerie novelty thing. So I'm sorry, Dr. John. You learned about AI, where it's going, new tools to be able to help you. Those may be part of your path forward. They may not. I don't know. But what I am most curious about is trying to understand what is stopping you from truly living your best life. We do a lot of work in the innovation space, and with that, we've been able to do some research with Purdue University, and specifically their Center for Innovation Excellence. During that time, we studied what prevents the adoption of new products, new services, new experiences. And it's a pretty small list, actually. Top of the list was access. I don't have access to the new thing or how to do the thing. Maybe I don't know how to do it, or I lack expertise, money, time. A lot of things that in the first world end up actually being a lot of excuses, because what they found is the primary thing that stops adoption is actually behavior and beliefs. We believe we don't have enough time. We believe we don't have enough money. We believe we don't have access to those things that we need. We get stuck in a fixed mindset, saying, I am what I am. It is what it is. Or you continue to parrot all of the other things that are around you, and you don't take responsibility for acting out of your own accord. That's right, these beliefs are extremely powerful things. They're extremely important. As you heard from my story, it kept me from doing something that I really, really wanted to do. And beliefs have a place in the world, right? By some estimates, our brains can handle 11 million bits of information at a time. But really, beliefs are simply a feeling of conviction that something is true. It's our best guess at reality. If our brain can only handle 1 million bits at a time, there's some supposition that our conscious minds can only handle 40 to 50 bits of that at a time. And therefore, we use beliefs, we use mental models, we use stories, we use biases as shortcuts. We have to. There's so much noise in the world. And yet, if you're like me, you've probably gotten to a point where some of those stories no longer serve you as well as they used to. Stephen Pressfield, amazing author, part-time philosopher, said that Socrates demonstrated long ago that the truly free individual is free only to the extent of his own or her own self-mastery, while those who will not govern themselves are condemned to find masters to govern over them. Who's interested in abdicating their responsibility and being governed the rest of their life? Anybody? Actually, how about a raise of hands? Who's actually more interested in the freedom that comes from self-mastery? Anybody want to take charge of that? So the framework that I want to share with you today and that we'll put into practice, inspired by the work of Byron Katie, is a core framework that is in the book that you're going to receive. And that's simply a way to help you pause and take stock of the beliefs and stories that you use in your life. That simple framework is, you got this belief. Mine was, I'm going to be rejected, right, if I write this book. Where did you learn that belief? Is it true? What do you gain, and what do you lose from holding that belief? Let me give you an example as we get into this. This, oh boy, you might have to turn to that screen for some of these ones. That is little Josh. I'm the one flying high up into the air. And if anybody asks me what's wrong with my head, I'm going to point to pictures like this, I think, right? Here are a bunch of other cute pictures of me as a kid. Again, better seen up on that one. The problem with these pictures, though, is I personally don't remember anything about them. Now, I think all of us probably don't remember a little bit about our childhoods. We only through the photos that we have. But I don't remember any of those clothes or settings or anything at all. We moved a lot as a kid. And in fact, several years ago, I asked my mother where we all moved. And I, like a good analytical person, gave her a spreadsheet. And she filled it in and gave me this back. Now, I'm not going to force you to read all of this. But basically, the punchline is I lived in 15 different houses before the age of 15. Some of them she couldn't even figure out. She didn't remember what the address was. In fact, I don't remember any of them until like that last line there, like that bottom left yellow one, my grandparents' house, where my brother and my mom and I lived in a single room with concrete walls. Now, at this point, a lot of people ask, military family? Oil? No, I just had a dad who really liked to change jobs and houses and chase cars. And maybe things didn't always work out for him the way that they should. Now, there's a bunch of reasons probably why that's how I turned out before I turned 15. But the story that little Josh took away from all that was, don't be selfish, because you'll hurt people. All I remember in that house that I shared was embarrassment of bringing friends over, or my mom crying a lot. So you know what? Don't be selfish. You'll hurt people. That's my story. So let's take it through a framework. Where did I learn this? Well, you could tell me part of it, right? I had models of that, at least I assumed, growing up. Also, to be fair, there's probably elements in society, religion, and others that were saying, don't be selfish, right? Is it true? Is it verifiably true? Don't be selfish. What do you think? You see, in my head, I made it a binary thing, right? You're either selfish or you're not selfish. But for the longest time, I felt like that was the true thing to hold on to. What do I gain by holding this? And this is true to all of your limiting beliefs. There are things that you gain from holding these. They're not all bad. I was seen as a very generous person. Everybody loves the person who says yes and abdicates their preferences or opinions, right? Whatever you want, of course, dear. Whatever you need. Now, what do I lose by holding on to this? Lost a lot of self-care, self-preservation, right? Always putting other things forward and first. I frustrated a lot of coworkers. I'm co-founder and CEO of a company. If I was constantly putting everybody else's needs in front of me, that's not a ridiculously inspiring vision. And I keep learning on this. Just several weeks ago, I was working with a coach, and that coach, after hearing the story of my father and the moving, her immediate reaction was, wow, what drive and energy your dad must have had to pursue those dreams at such a cost to those people that he probably loved. That was a whole new learning for me out of that. And you know what? I realized that another thing I was losing from holding that story was pushing my own dreams to the side because I thought that was selfish, right? I didn't truly understand yet that it was a spectrum that I was working with. So with that full display of vulnerability for you, what is stopping you from living your best life? This is where I'd like you to use your paper and pencil or your notes pad a little bit. I want you to think about some aspect from your life. Could be your job, could be a relationship, maybe it's your hobbies, pastimes, health, whatever it might be. I want you to think of something in your life. And I want you to think about where you are now in that thing. And a point in the future where you'd like to be. I call it point A to point B thinking. Pretty simple. Orient honestly to your point A. Where are you? And think about what point B might be. Now, I'm not talking about what society tells you perfect is in that thing. I'm not telling you what the trophy answer would be for what perfect is in that. I truly want you to reflect on what civil rights activist, theologian Howard Thurman said, and don't ask yourself what the world needs. Don't listen to all that noise. Ask yourself what makes you come alive. And go do that. Because what we need is more people who will come alive. Your point B may not make your boss proud, may not make your dad proud, may not make society proud. But I guarantee you things work out better in the end if we all just took a step closer into living out what actually would make us more fully come alive. So I'm going to give some examples. I'll keep vamping. You can tune me out for a moment here if you already got this and you want to write something down. But your point A might be you have a good job and you actually want to have fulfilling work. Maybe that's your point B. Maybe it's you're in a big house. Instead, you want to be in a right-sized house. That was a big one for me. I was 29, built a 7,000 square foot house because I could, and then started realizing how miserable I was with the mortgage that I could pay, but I probably shouldn't have, right? Maybe you have no time for hobbies. You want to start playing fill in the blank again. A few other examples. Maybe you're overworked and burnt out. Maybe you want to move to a better balance. Maybe you're stagnant in your role, constantly innovating. Whatever it might be. Tune me out, write down your B, because you're going to need a point B for some of our next exercises. Ooh, I forgot I put 3. Always on during vacation and able to step away. Man, that is a big one I still struggle with. Can I step away and actually unplug during vacation? How many people have a point B? I'm not going to ask you to share it. Anybody got a point B? Somewhere you're trying to move to in life? Some element of your life that you're trying to shift? Cool. Choose that point B, circle it, and I want us to think for a moment, what makes that hard? You acknowledge it. It's there. It's a desire. It's a goal you're trying to get to. Or maybe you just came up with it. I mean, that's fair too. But what makes that hard? There's a lot of consternation that happens as we think about where we are right now, if we orient honestly, and we think about where we're trying to go. One of my favorite models of change comes from the Berkana Institute. And the idea that we typically think of change is we're at some spot and we just got to get to the new place that we're trying to go. And it's going to be hard to get there through that. But one of the things that it ignores is the fact that we actually have the old thing that served us well that is also dying at the same time. Does that make sense? We ignore the fact that most of us are living in this weird liminal space. This space where there are things that served you well. Working your 80-hour weeks served you well. But you also have evidence inside you of some inquietud, right? You have some sort of like, it's not quite right. Some voice, something that is telling you that there might be something that you want to shift or move towards. And that's the space where we need to further explore these limiting beliefs that we have. So, I'd like you to take your point B that you have, whatever thing it is that you circled, and I want you to fill in this Mad Lib. I can't blank, whatever your point B is, because why? I'll give you a moment. I'll keep vamping a little bit too, so you can tune me out if you need to. Right, you heard one of mine before. I can't write a book because I'm a better curator. No, I can't write a book because I'm afraid if I put stuff down in writing, people are going to judge me. I can't write a book because whatever it might be. I can't take off during vacation because my team needs me so much. I can't take off during vacation because I'm afraid they'll realize they'll be okay without me. Whew, that's a hard one. What are some of the limiting beliefs people carry? I'm not asking for yours. I'm talking about read the paper next to you and tell me what they wrote, right? Yeah? Yeah? No. What are some limiting beliefs people carry? Like, just shout them out. I'm not what? I'm not good enough. I heard that one. What else? I don't have time to do it. What else? I'm scared. It's hard. I didn't hear that one. There are a lot of things, right, that cause limiting beliefs. Whatever you said back there was brilliant, I'm sure. We probably just can't hear each other, so I hear you. Thank you. Right, there's a lot of those limiting beliefs. That's okay. We sometimes hold guilt for those things, right? Like we shouldn't have those. But remember what I showed you before. They probably served you well for some part of your life. You're just moving to a new space where that is maybe no longer helpful. We've been talking a lot about success, thriving here. One of my favorite definitions of thrive comes from evolutionary biology. It's the idea that if things are really to thrive, some things have to be left behind. Some things are carried forward, and some things are rearranged, used in different ways. But to truly thrive, we have to let some things go and move forward. And that's hard because a lot of these limiting beliefs are caused by a number of factors: childhood, former boss, whatever it might be. But a lot of them all stem from the same place. They stem from some sort of fear that we have. A lot of these limiting beliefs actually help keep us safe from perceived or real danger. But what I found through a lot of the research that I did for the book, for a lot of the work we've done with leaders, is that most of those fears are not actually real saber-toothed tigers, right? They're perceived fears. They're things that probably helped you out at some point in your life and you're ready to move on from. So if you filled out that I can't blank because blank, I want you to choose one of those limiting beliefs. And I'm going to invite you to take that through our framework, okay? Again, this is private for you. I'm not going to ask for any examples. But I want you to think through that statement you wrote down or you typed in or you have in your head. Where did you learn that thing? Is it really true? Objectively, verifiably true. What do you gain from it? How has that served you in the past? How does it serve you today? How does it keep you safe? It's okay. What do you lose by still holding that belief? You'll notice there's not a fifth question, which is, and now go do something about it. Quite honestly, I think we are so focused on, and now what's the action plan? What's the next step to be able to do it? When instead, we just need to spend a lot more time waking up to what you're thinking and feeling right now. Remembering that each and every one of us has agency. You get to choose. It may be scary, but you get to choose. We're so used to waiting for like GPS to tell us exactly the steps we need to do. Or the system to tell us, and then blame it on that if we didn't like the outcomes. What I'm trying to do is help you get more in tune with a compass that you have inside of you. Just being able to step back for a moment and say, why am I feeling that? What am I thinking? Why did I do that? When you start to practice that, You actually realize these questions can be used pretty much anywhere. At this point in the talk, some of you are thinking, wow, this is really soft and squishy. Cool. Where'd you learn that talks like this are soft and squishy? Is it true? What do you gain from holding that? What do you lose from holding that belief? It works. Other side of it. Man, Josh is killing it. He's great. I love talks like this. Cool. Where did you learn that you should like talks like this? Is it true? I don't care, honest. I don't need anything from any of you. Patrick already paid my invoice. I just need y'all to wake up. Be aware. I think these chairs suck to sit in. Where did I learn this? I've been sitting in them all morning. Is it true? Yes. Sorry, event staff. What do I gain by thinking that? Well, it gives me something to talk about with the other people next to me. What do I lose? Ooh. What do I lose by thinking these chairs suck to sit in? There's always beliefs. They always there's something there. Presence. That's a big one. In Vipassana meditation, they teach us that all elements, even of suffering, are moments to potentially practice presence. Right? Fascinating. How might you even use this present moment of those chairs to grow? What? Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. Famous psychiatrist Carl Jung. And what I'll contend is that not only will it direct your fate, and life will continue to keep serving you up these same lessons, these same chairs to be sitting in, but it also impacts and directs the lives of others. You as marketers and leaders have asymmetrical influence on the world. Holy cow. If you are walking around acting unconsciously, you will influence way more people than my accountant, than my lawyer, right? You have asymmetrical influence. It is imperative that you understand that your actions impact other people's actions, that impact other people's actions. And when you think about that flywheel, your actions actually impact other people's beliefs that impact their actions. A couple examples. Imagine somebody cuts me off in traffic. I think, what a jerk. I speed around them. They're like, yeah, traffic, brr. They flip me off, right? Like, we have a vicious cycle that we're going in together. Conversely, you show up at the Starbucks, somebody pays for your coffee. You get to your belief, and either out of generosity or guilt, you buy the next person's coffee. And it continues in a much more virtuous cycle. This also happens at work. One of my favorite case stories, you'll see it in chapter 5 of the book, is about a gentleman named Jean-Francois Aubry. Jean-Francois took over as CEO of an automotive parts company in France. And if you would have entered this manufacturing facility, it looks probably like what you would assume, right? There's the time clock cards you go punch in at. There's the ivory tower. This one had a separate cantina for the managers from the workers. All of the tools and supplies were locked up, that sort of place. And after a few months of observing this, Jean-Francois said, this doesn't feel right. We're going to flip a lot of this on its head. I enjoyed designing an organization built on the assumption that the human is considered good. People always tend to act as they're considered. So what Jean-Francois did, he got rid of time clock cards. He unlocked the tools, trusted people to go get the things they needed. Symbolically, he even built a brick wall in front of this window that the managers used to peer down on the lines at all of the people. And what happened? Any guesses? People rose up to the challenge. They started to increase productivity. People started showing up earlier and staying later. Their efficiency went up. They eventually captured 50% market share and were a dominant player in their industry for about 20 years. Now, if that all sounds a little naive, Jean-Francois would actually agree. His memoir was entitled, "The Enterprise Liberated by the Naive and Lazy Little Boss." He knew that it was naive to step into that. And yet, I believe he understood the power of exactly what he already said, right? People tend to act as they are considered. Seeing Bill up here, Patrick there, all the Becker and Level people in here, you are at a critical moment of your organizations coming together. Critical. Like the amount of potential, energy, and synergy that could be in this room together is going to be amazing. And somebody's going to do something that's going to run into somebody from the other team, and they're going to think like, do we trust these people? Should we really? And they're going to have a choice, right? They're going to get to choose if they believe the person was trying their best and giving them the benefit of the doubt, or they're going to choose, nope, those Level people, those Becker, whatever it might be. This happens anywhere in life. The problem is we can't control, though, how other people respond. You're not going to control those other teams. All you get to control is what you believe and the limiting beliefs that you carry into that and the actions that result from those beliefs. Psychiatrist, Holocaust survivor, author of Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl, said exceptionally well that between stimulus and response, there is a space. Now, again, get this in your head. He was witnessing this. It was the matter of life or death from people and what their will was to live. And he said, you can't control anything else that's happening around you. The one last thing you can actually control, your one last freedom you have, is your decision to respond and how you're going to respond in that moment. A mentee of his, Fred Kaufman, called that your response ability. Clever. You have the ability to respond, or as I said before, you get to choose. And whether it's in your personal life or here, whether it's with your new Becker Level teammates or anything, I am asking you, what will you choose? Will you choose fear, comfort? Will you choose selfishness, hope, cynicism? What will you choose, regardless of how the other person acts? Now, I'm not saying be willfully ignorant, okay? It's a spectrum. And what I've learned over time is that those leaders who have a more chosen naivete end up excelling, prospering, thriving even more than those who have a chosen cynicism, or an ignorant cynicism, if you will, right? In fact, a core part of the book, and one of the biggest ahas that I experienced from this, was that the idea of being naive is actually misunderstood, right? It didn't actually mean something negative until a few hundred years ago. You see, our ancestors used the word nativus, which specifically meant something that was authentic, genuine, natural, or innate. Something that was in you from the start. It wasn't only until a few hundred years ago, during the Age of Enlightenment, when reason was king, and during colonialism, when being native, or indigenous wisdom and everything, was looked down upon, that we started using naif and naive as a more pejorative term. And so it honestly doesn't go without surprise that now in a hyper-industrialized, hyper-rational world, anything that reeks of feeling naive is scary or put off as weak or soft or any of those sorts of things. And yet, it might actually be some of those things that are most critical to helping you come fully alive. Because that voice is coming from somewhere. In fact, it's probably coming from somewhere that was there from the start. but was maybe quieted by a bunch of things that said you shouldn't think that way, or you shouldn't be that way. It's not how business works. You don't know anything. I hope, as those cycles come back around, you choose optimism. I hope you choose trust. I hope you choose curiosity. I hope you choose love. Because those are what are going to help us have more of what we call ripples of impact. It's a new ROI. I wasn't the first person to coin this, but if you look even all the way back to the books like Firms of Endearment or some of the work around conscious capitalism, even Dana referenced some of these things this morning, right? Firms that actually balanced rational thinking with emotional and intuitive thinking. Those who considered all stakeholders actually outperformed a lot of times. And yet, most of the best ones actually first focused on the types of impact they could make, and then the results followed, right? It was an authentic approach to that. Gandhi's routinely credited with the be the change you want to be in the world. It's actually a summary, I've learned, of this particular quote. If we could change ourselves, the tendencies in the world would also change. As a person changes their own nature, so does the attitude of the world change towards them. It's a ripple. When you lead with trust first, trust often is reciprocated. Now, I was asked to talk a little bit about AI. I'm not an AI expert, but I dug in a little bit to say what would I have to say around artificial intelligence, since this was a key theme of the conference. And so here's my take. Back in 21, as some of you probably know better than I do, a few of the lead ethics researchers at Google were fired, right? They had put out a paper on the danger of stochastic parrots, right? This idea that with large learning models, we are going to have things that are really great, similar to what Dr. Roberts was saying earlier. We're going to have things that are really great at looking at patterns and repeating those patterns back to us, right? Without an understanding of the meaning that was underneath those patterns. And so how this applies to me is there's a lot of unconscious word choices that we use. Most of our work is done in the human resources stage, and that word, human resources, implies something. When we start to just think of people as resources, or people on the front line, or we use a lot of terms that we still have left over from military or machine-oriented ways of thinking of systems, we actually are training, according to their thoughts, AI to continue to perpetuate that meaning into the future. Right? There's a common phrase, words create worlds. We're actually at a space where words will continue to perpetuate the worlds that we'll have into the future. I grew up in sales and marketing. Didn't mention that before. But I was very fond of thinking about my targets, putting people in a funnel, prospecting people. Let's just time out for a moment. Prospect. That's the same word we used to use to indicate a place that we think there might be valuable ore. And we're going to go take some metal tools and scratch away at that thing to be able to see if we can take out what we think is valuable out of that thing. Now, I'm not saying that's how y'all use Prospect today. But when Microsoft 365 loads Copilot, and it starts reading all of your Teams messages and all of your Outlook messages, and uses those things to be able to perpetuate a lot of the ways and the words that we use without an understanding to the deeper meaning, what sorts of things are we maybe unconsciously continuing in the world as we think about the language that we use? To end with, I'll tell a story of one of my sales and marketing mentors. His name is Steve. Now, next week, is actually the 10th anniversary from when I left and went out on my own. Left an employer where I got to see the world, did work in about 30 different countries, helping people select, develop, and change their cultures. And as I went out on my own, We put our house up for sale. We were pregnant with our 4th kid. Goes without saying, make sure this is on video. I have an amazing wife. Trisha is wonderful. But another mentor and leader who helped me through this was Steve. He was a client and a partner before I left. And after I left, Steve was right there alongside me again, cheering, helping me out, being a good mentor. That was 2013. In 2017, we learned that he had a terminal diagnosis, brain cancer. And I participated in sending notes, tribute video, those sorts of things. And in May, we learned that it was probably his last days. And so I sent him a text message, half assuming that it would be his family who would be reading that last message that I sent to Steve. And lo and behold, Steve replied. He said, "I think the world of you, Josh. Whatever pearls of wisdom spill out of my brain will be in no better hands than yours. I wish you and your family nothing but love and success in everything you do." He died less than a couple of weeks after that. And I think about a lot of the wisdom that Steve was able to share with me and continues to share with me. In fact, you almost had a book that looked like this. I kind of like the cover. But this spring, I was set to publish this book and was really struggling with how it looked, the layout, everything. Had some other issues with my publisher. Steve actually visited me in a dream. And what I recall waking up was him saying something about, "I don't care if you don't think you're good enough for this book, or that it's selfish to want something better for this book. This book deserves more. Get out of its way." He also shared another pearl of wisdom that I had waking up, and that's what I want to leave you with. He was always fond of saying the proverb, "When is the best time to plant a tree?" Does anybody know how it goes? When is the best time to plant a tree? 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, right? When's the second best time to plant a tree? Today! I don't care, actually I care, but metaphorically, I don't care about what right turns, wrong turns, or anything that got you to where you're sitting here today in the Wintergarten here in Pittsburgh. You get to start today, and I sure hope something was planted inside of you, a new idea, a new story, a new belief, something about how things can be better in the world. Because if we're going to create a better world out here, it has to start with you. And to celebrate that, I kind of did something else naive. I knew there was going to be 170 people here. So I bought and am having 170 trees planted on behalf of all of the attendees here. Chances are some of us in this room will not be here when these trees are to maturity and they'll actually have a difference in the world, right? Who cares? It's going to take irrational acts of optimism and kindness, love and stewardship to truly make this world better. And if anything that I'm saying here connects with you, I invite you, damn it, I dare you to be naive with me, okay? Thank you.